Mhm.
But I'm like wondering, like, was it specifically made or did you just find it?
It's very funny. Okay, so when I lived in New York, actually, at one point when I worked with Bill T. Jones, I had a lot of, it was in Harlem, and there were a lot of, there was this guy actually, and you would find people all the time like this, and he would sell these vintage dresses in Harlem from like, all kinds of eras. And I would just buy them at random. If I had the money, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this one's nice. I'd always see him like once a week. He'd go to this particular block and he'd sell these gorgeous dresses. And so I just have a thing for dresses, and especially when it relates to my work with that whole theme about motherhood and what I was talking about in embodying this persona of like a woman, and that being very feminine, particularly challenging those negative stereotypes when it comes to Black women and women of color. So when I have had COVID hit, I ended up purchasing several dresses because I wanted to start exploring more of my work. This happened to be a dress that I had with a few dresses. Unfortunately, with COVID, about three, like I was at a couple of funerals dancing at them. And so I kind of ran through all my dresses, given that there were so many deaths, which normally wouldn't be a normal thing. So I had to kind of go with something that I hadn't worn at a funeral and something that I could dance in, but I had bought this dress for myself in particular. I hadn't bought this dress for me to dance in for anything. And I'm kind of funny about like, I don't want to like perform in something and then you see it in a video or performance that I'm doing. I don't know, it depends on what it is, but I like to keep a costume sort of, it has something, special about that. So anyway, that was like the last dress that I had in between buying new things after my surgery. Now it's COVID. I've run through my dresses for funerals. But I feel like it's interesting because when I wore the dress, the architect reached out to me and asked me about the name of the dress because someone that he knew saw it. Maybe it wasn't the architect. I think it was just somebody else who saw it. And they were a costume designer and they used to do like Broadway musicals in New York City. And this dress comes from the 1930s. And I can't think of the name of it, but it has a very significant meaning of the Harlem Renaissance. And I just thought that was really special because that wasn't necessarily my intention. But in thinking about the experience of Black people here in America, especially when it comes to resilience and like sort of like overcoming that area of the Harlem Renaissance, the Black arts movement, those are very powerful times and movements for Black people. So for that dress to have that sort of historical meaning, which I didn't really realize, it was just kind of like, this made sense. And I also love patterns because I think that with patterns, there's repetition. And I think that with patterns, especially when you are trying to recreate or reimagine like identity, showing something over and over again really gets into people's psyche, right? That's actually what happened with vaudeville, showing these very negative stereotypes in blackface and in blackface performances, vaudeville and minstrels gave these very negative connotations of people, right? So to reverse that, I think of patterns in the same way, whether that's a pattern with my movement or a collection of movements or something that I'm wearing, because it just stays in somebody's mind. And then there's the element of flowers, right? The pattern itself was floral. The floral pattern was what I noticed in the album cover, which is interesting that they used it for that reason, for their work and the music. One of the things that we talked about when we were doing the documentary, after I talked to the people, because the soundscape was made and then I came and danced. So it's not like I collaborated with the soundscape. And the musicians explained that one of them, his mother danced with Alvin Ailey, and his mom also did the screaming in the piece, and which I didn't know. And he was just so overwhelmed at the way that I moved to the piece and how I interpreted the music and what I was wearing, and to evoke his mother's cry. And he said he asked his mother to scream as if something were wrong. Like you just hear that you've lost, like something's happened to your child. So that to me was just really powerful. And I think it just tied into this dress. It just was very serendipity how it ended up being what it was. And